Hi, Smart News. Today we're going to be talking about what some describe as the most dangerous place on the planet. And it might not be the first place that comes to mind when you hear that description, but it's a really important story that immediately could impact your life in many, many different ways. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on it today. What I'm talking about is the part of the world where China and Taiwan are, and this particular tension between these two entities. So I wanted to show you this map. Take a look at where the Philippine Sea is. That's going to become important in a moment. But while I show you that map, I also want to bring you over to the globe Vanna White style, as I like to, because this is always very helpful to take a look at it in this way. Here is the island of Taiwan, about 100 miles off the coast of China. Here are the Philippine Sea, North and South Korea, and all the way down here is Australia. Remember last week we just talked about a new security pact between Australia, the United States, and the UK. And remember, Australia canceled that submarine order with France, but then is purchasing nuclear submarines from the United States. Just take a look at this, because remember, China is a nuclear power too. So it's important to know the strategic location of Australia and why that pact might be important. So let me bring you to what is actually happening in the news of the moment. Over the weekend, we got some pretty significant headlines. China was sending military planes into Taiwanese airspace. And so to understand why that's really important, we have to go back a little bit. So back in the 1940s, there was a civil war and there was a split between Taiwan and China, although China does not recognize that split. China still believes Taiwan is part of China. Taiwan does not agree with that. Taiwan says, we're independent. We democratically elect our leaders, for example. China remains the largest communist nation in the entire world. So they are in conflict, in disagreement. It's important to note that the United States has diplomatic relations with China. So we have an embassy in China, for example. We don't have one anymore in Taiwan, but we show our support in many ways for the Taiwanese and for their desire for independence. So it is a tricky, unique foreign policy story to take a look at our relations and others with Taiwan. Some will call Taiwan a country, some will not. In most cases, we'll call Taiwan Taiwan, because the status of Taiwan may change and you may hear it described differently where you are in the world. So when China sends its military planes into Taiwanese airspace, it's looked at as provocative action, and they've done it periodically. This is not new. But over the weekend, they sent these planes at a very high quantity. In fact, the highest quantity that we've seen per day, for example, more than 50 in one day. So imagine you're in Taiwan and you're seeing these military planes overhead. That it's very much intimidation. Some describe it as harassment. And it's also seen as a ratcheting up of tensions, of a test of China's kind of continuing to test the boundaries. How many planes can they send before this actually could turn into some sort of real military conflict? So while that was happening between China and Taiwan, I want to show you something else that was taking place. The US military was conducting exercises with our allies, Japan and the UK. We were doing this in the Philippine Sea. Let me just go back to that map so you can see it's not that far from where all of this other story was taking place as well. So the United States is there. Remember, the United States Navy and the importance of Navy domination is critical to our military might as a nation. And I say that not only because I'm a Navy wife, but because it's a really important show of military force and the technology that America has along with our allies. We do these military exercises as a way to practice and coordinate and choreograph with our allies in case of an emergency, but it also can be used as a show of force that is significant. And that was what was happening over the weekend. Now, why is this important? Why should this matter? Of course, the stakes are very high. If you see a military conflict between China and Taiwan, then the question becomes, what is America's next move? America and China, they're both nuclear nations. Could you actually see nuclear war because of what's happening in this part of the world? Some suggest it's possible. Could we see something that could just be as deadly, and as dangerous and as disruptive as a military conflict? Maybe not all-out war, but yes, these are some of the stakes. What's really important, kind of an important side story, and where this could impact you even in the immediate, is Taiwan is a site and the home of one of the most important strategic semiconductor companies in the entire world. Semiconductors are those little tiny chips that go into almost anything that you own. In fact, one analyst I read this morning says if you could plug it in or it has a battery, it likely has a semiconductor. So your car, your computer, your phone? What about those little toys that drive you crazy around the house that light up and make noise? Those, we have semiconductors in almost everything. And one of the biggest stories of the pandemic has been disruptions in the semiconductor industry. And what that has done to the car industry, for example, where cars can actually be fully produced because they're waiting on these chips. So this has been a kind of a side story of the pandemic. And what I saw this week that was important is a semiconductor company CEO, not the one from Taiwan, but another one, said, listen, these disruptions in our industry could last through the end of next year. Some don't believe as long, but that's really important to note in case you're looking to buy anything from a refrigerator to a car to a toy for Christmas. It's important to know that there is a struggle in the industry to get some of these products across the finish line because of semiconductors. Now, going back to that major company that's in Taiwan, they have some really big customers in the United States and in China. And so there is also strategic incentive to make sure that particular company that's the most advanced in the industry doesn't experience a lot of disruptions. So that's a side of the story. You want to know where that company is opening a factory? In Arizona. Interesting to note. So a couple different storylines here I just want to make you aware of. I want to make you aware of the tensions that's happening in this part of the world. We've seen a couple different stories focused on this area. It's important to keep it in the forefront of our mind because of the stakes when it comes to foreign policy. But when it comes to our economy and semiconductors in particular, that small island of Taiwan is important for the entire world. We're already seeing disruptions in the industry, so you should be aware of that regardless, but also know that the ripple effects of this foreign policy story can really hit you at home. So I wanted to make you aware of all of that today. So we have more of that story on our website. We also have a really cool archaeological discovery that would not be the first thing that came to mind when I thought about what an archaeologist could discover in Jerusalem. But it's interesting and it's worth checking out. So visit smarternews.com for more on that today. Questions and comments on this story and others, please let me know, and always more on our website. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.